When we talk about labor, we talk about the workforce, we talk about talent. This has been one of the storylines for sure for Alberta businesses over the past year at least.
Oh, since we've been surveying Alberta businesses since 2019 with our Alberta Perspectives research platform, it's always been in the top 3 and often top 1 or 2 over the course of those years. So we know, our businesses in the province need the qualified and skilled people to run and to grow and thrive and diversify and get into new markets. So we continue to keep really close eye on talent. It's a priority for me as well in terms of, how and where we provide the support to our members.
There's been a lot of talk about Canada reducing the number of temporary foreign workers in Canada. And I always want to know, like, when the rubber hits the road, where are businesses at? Where are employers at with this? What are your members saying to you about TFWs?
Yeah, so really what it is the government of Canada is reducing the number of LMIAs that it's going to actually approve. And it's really looking at what's triggered this really is that our unemployment average has gone up to 6.2%. So they're really looking at that and saying, okay, why do we have such high unemployment yet we're still approving so many of these new applications for temporary foreign workers to come in? So they're looking at reducing some of the things, some of the areas geographically, for instance, in cities or areas in the province where unemployment is over 6%, they'll reduce those application approvals. They're also looking at making exceptions, though, for any industry. So in Alberta, food security, that's where we would see in agriculture a lot of temporary foreign workers. So they are looking at making exceptions, which are really good for us in Alberta.
Yeah, healthcare as well, right? Which
That's right.
I know is something they're looking at. So you've got, these are, by the way, labor market impact assessments.
Oh, yes, sorry.
That's fine. No, it's like, listen, we know that there are people that know exactly what that is and some that might not. But the geographic exemptions as well that you mentioned. And this is something where I think, like, the story could be different in different parts of the country too, right?
Absolutely. You'll see, obviously, geography plays a big part in that. And where we see, like I said, in our province, in the agriculture sector is where we see a lot. Also in, retail, fast food, those types of industries, we see a lot of temporary foreign workers.
Yeah. How much monitoring are you doing when it comes to actual immigration? It's so interesting to see where certain people land on this, because you'll have the folks that say immigration is absolutely integral to Canada's workforce. It's integral to keeping our programs running and keeping staffing levels where they need to be. And a lot of other people are looking at this. We've talked to Immigration Minister Mark Miller about this. Is immigration partly to blame for, like, the housing crunch and for unemployment numbers? And Canadians are sort of, like, at different points on the spectrum here, and I'm not sure 100% that it's based on partisan politics. I think for a lot of people it's based on what is their reality. Is their reality that they can't find enough workers, or is their reality that they can't find affordable housing and they're looking for a reason why? Are your members, like, sort of something commenting on this en masse?
Yeah, I think, Alberta saw its highest level of immigration last year than we've ever seen, record numbers. Yeah. And we know that's putting pressure on the system. We know for a fact that, having healthcare, having housing for these individuals coming in is critically important infrastructure. And it puts a strain on the system. At the same time, we also know that as a population, Canada is not growing at a level that's going to fill these positions and fill these jobs and roles that our business community need. And we need people to be in those positions, skilled people, lower entry level individuals, as well as, the highly skilled. And trades and apprentices and all of the entire gamut of what we need in our environment to do business in Alberta.
How about this cap on international students? Is this something, I would imagine this is something that the Alberta Chambers has been keeping an eye on, federal government's cap on international students. Alberta, for context, for our audience, Alberta had just over 25,000 international students. The most recent numbers we have are for the 21-22 academic year. How does this translate into your mandate and what business owners and owner-operators would care about in this province?
Yeah, so in Alberta, it's not really going to impact us, to be honest with you. The cap really is going to impact, like, the province of Ontario, the province of BC somewhat, a few of the other provinces. But for Alberta, we're well below our quota for international students. We're sitting right around about 23 to 25,000, and it's projected that if this cap does come in, that we would still be given 42,000 permits, which is way higher than where we're even sitting right now.
More than the numbers we've seen.
Exactly. And we do have an actual policy at the Alberta Chamber around recruiting international students into the province, simply because we need those skilled individuals. Just like I said, I can't say it enough, and I feel like I've been repeating myself a lot on your show.
That's okay. I mean, these are key points. I mean, we want to know what's most important, what's on people's radar.
It's just that skilled talent that we need. And it really it's about the work permit piece of it, right? So for us at ACC, our policy is actually asking them to extend that postgraduate permit to 5 years from 3 years, and that would do a great deal in terms of providing the additional runway for these individuals to actually find a path to permanent residency within the province, because that's the challenge, is trying to get all of the points that you need to try and go through that approval process to graduate from that work permit, that postgraduate work permit, to permanent residence, and the path that you have to take to get there.
Yeah, and it's not without protest. Like, you look at, I mean, we're talking a lot about back to school. That includes university students, and right now, the numbers are pretty significant. Like, the numbers that I've read, over 70,000 international students could face deportation. I mean, that's enormous. That's a population of 2 big universities, for context.
Absolutely. And yeah, they're protesting, and they have every right to. I mean, these are students that have come into the province with a line of sight into a path for a new future, a new home in Canada. These are highly skilled individuals that we need in our workforce, that, the course has changed, and it's changed midstream for a lot of them, which is, we feel that probably it's an estimated $21 billion is going into the Canadian economy because of these students on an annual basis. And so when you think about that, and you think about, 70,000 of them going home, the impact on our economy, and the impact on our businesses, again, to find the people that they need, because these students fill a lot of those roles.
$21 billion to the Canadian economy. I've never seen that number presented before. We'll link to it. There's the resources on your website, on the Alberta Chambers of Commerce website, that we'll link to in the show notes. People can always check out abchamber.ca. So when it comes to, like, if you're sitting down with, let's say you've got federal cabinet, you're bending their ear, and you're putting forward policy that you think would be best case scenario, that you think would be most intuitive, or that you think might be setting up Canadian businesses, and in particular Alberta businesses, to be positioned where they need to be, what would be a couple of key points that you would really drive home to policymakers, to cabinet?
Are you talking around international students specifically? Yeah. So what I already said, Ryan, is increase that runway for them to find that permanent path.
After school, after graduation.
Right. Give them an additional amount of time, because 3 years goes by very quickly.
Sure.
And especially in that approval process to get that permanent status, giving them that extra couple years to get the additional points they need to be able to get the recommendations, get the nominations that they need, all critically important. So that's one of them. And then really considering too, when they're looking at permanent residency for these international students, think about the sectors where we need people, and think about looking at those differently than other sectors, or more of those higher level places like food security, like healthcare, where we know we need people, and we need them now, and these students can fill those roles. Look at how you can maybe expedite that process a little bit more for those, and skilled trades, again, another one where we absolutely need people.
Look at how we're talking about population growth, and how we're expecting our cities, our urban centers, to grow across Canada. In particular, though, I mean, the forecasted population growth in Alberta over the next 30 years is astounding, and the need for skilled trades is going to be enormous. I should mention, by the way, I should have mentioned this for our audience benefit before I even asked you about this, but I mean, this is something you obviously take personally. But when it comes to your career, you're a member of the Provincial Career Education Task Force, the Provincial Dual Credit Advisory Committee, the Foreign Credential Recognition Advisory Committee. This is something obviously that matters to you deeply.
Well, and it matters to my role at the ACC in terms of being able to really support some good policy that will impact businesses and make that ability to get and hire the talent they need much easier. That's the dream, right? Is that if you need people, you'd have people. And if there's people out there that are skilled, you would have them in those roles too. I also co-chair the Alberta Talent Development Task Force, which we've done a panel on before. And that's a partnership with ACC and the Alberta Post-Secondary Network to really work on, we're talking about talent, but we need experienced talent, we need skilled talent, we need entry-level talent, we need talent in all sectors across all walks of life in terms of getting them into positions. And really it's a focus because we need it to be a focus so that we can ensure that the members and the businesses in the province of Alberta have access to who they need when they need them.
When we're talking international students, let's say, you've got these, grade 11, grade 12 students, early post-secondary students in China, India, Australia, Austria, wherever. And they're looking at all their options, and they're looking all around the world. What's your assessment of where Canada stands as a post-secondary destination? And in particular, let's talk about the province of Alberta and the big post-secondaries here as well. What's your assessment of how we stack up internationally?
Oh, very well. I mean, we have ACC ourselves. We have several international students that are working with us as summer students.
Oh, nice.
We have, international students that have been working with us for years. And it's, Alberta is a very attractive place because we have a great quality of life, lower cost of living. If you can get past the weather. That tends to be the thing.
That's why you got to get them here, like on Labor Day weekend or before.
Yeah, like they should have been here this past
everybody
weekend.
Everybody sees how perfect
which
it is.
Which is perfect.
And then,
they probably would have been landing right around,
that's right.
mid to late last week, getting back. And so, we're tricking them right now. So
no kidding.
Let's have a conversation in January.
I was talking to a couple buddies and some family members that work in ag, in particular, farming, and obviously that potential rail interruption, that rail stoppage was all over everybody's radar.
Of course.
I think around harvest time, it's just more on people's radar for obvious reasons, transporting commodities and the like. But how was your team processing all that and keeping an eye on all of that before these binding arbitration orders?
Oh, did a ton of advocacy. Worked with the Canadian Chamber of Commerce. Obviously, it's a national event, so worked with them, signed off with them. They were on it day to day. They were making statements and writing letters. We also wrote to all of the MPs in the province of Alberta, every single one of them, stating our concerns. We mobilized our network across the province to also locally reach out to their MPs, and it resulted in binding arbitration, which is exactly what we wanted. I mean, it would have been nice if it would have happened before there was any stoppage whatsoever, but it did happen, and now things are getting back on track, although there's some challenges with, people preparing for that stoppage and some of the bottlenecks it's caused, but just really happy that all of that advocacy did not go unheard. And I mean, it's not Chambers, it was every business association, organization, individual businesses, everybody would have been impacted by this, and everybody was advocating to make sure that it did not happen.
Yeah. You wrote a letter, I saw this, your team was kind enough to pass it on back mid-August to the Premier of Alberta, Danielle Smith, and her best buddy, Federal Minister Randy Boissonnault, Minister of Employment, Federal Minister of Employment, obviously. But in regards to the announcement of suspending the Canada-Alberta Job Grant due to a reduction of funding through the federal labor market and transfer agreements, why was this such a big deal, and why was it on your radar?
Yeah, so we're talking so much about talent, but a big part of what happens in the evolution of a business is you need to upskill and reskill the people in your organization into, and more so now than ever before, looking forward with AI and all of the things that are going to change the way these jobs look. A year from now, it could be 100% different than what it is now. And so that ability to provide some relief to employers so that they can do that upskill and reskill. And the fact that it was actually a really nice marriage of federal, provincial, and business funding. So it was a third. So everybody was, supporting that advancement of skills for workers wanting to get into new roles, new positions. And so it was just a really elegant program that we're really sorry to see gone. And obviously that's, the federal transfers, but it'd be great if we could look at, maybe there's some solutions, some way that we could collaborate provincially and federally to get that program back up and running, because thousands and thousands and thousands of workers in the province took advantage of it. Thousands of businesses took advantage of it.
Do you typically feel like when you're advocating to governments, municipal, provincial, federal, what have you, that governments give a rip? We hear a lot of people come on this show from a whole bunch of different industries, and oftentimes they'll talk about, in their estimation, insufficient or non-existent consultation. Do you typically feel like governments are open to and legitimately interested in what businesses have to say?
In my experience, absolutely. I mean, just last week we sat down with the Premier, Danielle Smith, to talk about, everything from what we're talking about, skills, to worries about what's going on in the electricity market, worries about what's going on in terms of housing and healthcare, all the things our businesses are putting on our radar in terms of the challenges that they're having in getting the people that they need, because there are all these major challenges. Also, she is very open with us anyway about what her priorities and challenges are and what's coming down the pipeline, which makes it even easier for us to know where we should be putting our efforts around policy and advocacy, and where we should be, getting feedback or doing maybe some research around some priority areas that we can help inform the government.
Just a few shows ago, we had a chance to check in with Jasper's Mayor, Richard Ireland, who's just, obviously part of a team on that Jasper Town Council, but we took the opportunity to commend him on his steadfast leadership through obviously unimaginable circumstances. Last time you were here, it was like, it was very, obviously it still is a developing story, but it was like fresh.
Yeah.
And you talked to us about this resource through Alberta Chambers, building business resiliency. But I know that this is something that, and then the town of Jasper and the businesses of Jasper is something that you and your team have been working with probably on a day-to-day basis since the 24th of July when disaster struck. Do you have an update you can tell us about?
Yeah, so we were able to host a town hall. We had fantastic participation. Well over almost 100 individuals joined us. We had, Minister Jones. We had representation from Parks Canada. We had representation from the municipality. We had individuals that were specialists in insurance and banking and all of the things that, the businesses are going to need to be paying attention to as they're getting back into business and back into, okay, what is the runway and what is my reality in terms of, reopening, what's realistic, and what do I need to be thinking about to make sure that happens, and how do I also ensure that my business survives through this, which is critically important for us. And so we have that. We have the Chamber Relief Trust Fund, which is a trust fund that will support the Chamber itself. So we actually have Patty, who's the Executive Director of the Jasper Chamber, coming into our office tomorrow to work out of one of our offices and to also just have a conversation around, okay, where can we apply those funds that's going to support the Chamber to then support their members and the business community as they look to rebuild and reopen.
Yeah, I mean, Mayor Ireland makes, great points that may seem obvious to people, but it's like, if people are going to return home, and we recognize that a lot of folks don't have that option right now. For some people, this will be a 1 or 2 or 3 year interruption in everyday life, but you've also got to have people able to work if they're going to come back. And it's interesting, right? Like in so many ways as maybe Alberta, like the energy industry is so incredibly important. Agriculture is incredibly, every region of Canada has its industries, and tourism obviously is so important to Jasper, and so many operators. Many of them are going to be starting again, but some of them are just ready to get going, but they need to have those pieces in place, and the town needs to be ready to welcome visitors again. And I know that there's so much work happening behind the scenes for that to happen. It's not like there's 55 different industries there that are supporting that town and keeping people employed.
Yeah, and I mean that's the key point, right? Is they got hit at their highest point in the season in terms of revenue generation. This is their Christmas.
Yes,
and it's going to have an impact. And so all of the supports and resources that we can provide, or all of the access to supports and resources that are going to be available, and just making sure that on that business resiliency page that we have on ACC's website, that we really kind of have step-by-step instructions. And it's set up in such a way, it's been curated in such a way too, that it's about preparation in advance of an event, it's about during the event, and then it's about post-event. And so just making sure that we provide them with as many resources as we know about, we're out there curating that on their behalf.
That Building Business Resiliency page is an amazing resource. We'll link to it in the show notes. Coming up on the 30th of September, the Monday, is the National Day for Truth and Reconciliation, but the Chamber's doing something on the Friday ahead of time, on the 27th of September. What do people need to know about this virtual event?
Yeah, it'll be an hour virtual event recognizing National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. We'll have Desmond Jackson joining us, and we'll be making some announcements about some memorandums of understanding that we've signed in the last few months. So excited about that, and just really excited about honoring that day, doing it on the 27th, because we're hoping to get those individuals that will be at in-person events and all of the other things on the 30th into a conversation with Desmond about what it actually means to do that authentically.
No, it's great that you're doing it. People can find out more about that at abchamber.ca. Before you go, I want to ask you about a couple of other things. You do have a talent development symposium happening. It's coming up. I mean, I don't know how you keep an eye on your calendar. It's like you guys have a lot of stuff going on, but who's this for?
So that is, the symposium is that partnership, the Talent Development Task Force. So it's going to be really focused in on, key programming streams like labor market information, about work integrated learning opportunities, focusing in on areas like how do we engage students earlier on into those conversations. As you mentioned, one of the streams too, I participated on the Career Education Task Force, which it's how do we also think about getting students into these roles sooner. In high school, thinking about if you want to trade, then let's path them through a trade. If you want to be a doctor, let's path them through the sciences. If you want to be a nurse, whatever the case may be, we're looking at giving them those opportunities sooner. So that'll be a stream. And it's really about engaging all three, being able to really effectively engage students with industry, with post-secondary institutions, and providing that forum, that one place where they all can be in the same room, hearing, what are the opportunities, but also what are some of the challenges we're currently experiencing.
That's so
and doing
good, though,
that effectively.
You're connecting those groups,
Yeah.
right? Like that, because if you're not doing it, it's not going to happen. And I think it's incredibly important. That's November 27th. It's an all-day event, 8:30 in the morning till 7 at night. And people can learn more about that event, Talent Development Symposium, November 27th at abchamber.ca. Finally, you got your big fall board meeting coming up, and the Deputy Minister's Dinner, which I know is always popular for a lot of people. They really enjoy that.
Yeah, we really enjoy that event too, because it's the opportunity to get in front of the deputy ministers. Last year we had every single deputy minister in the room.
That's amazing.
So it makes it so that our chambers and our members and the businesses coming can actually identify who they want to sit with and who they want to talk with, and having access to all of them in the same room is it's pretty special. And you don't necessarily just have to sit at their table. You can rotate the room and talk to several if you need to.
Yeah.
Because they're all in the same place at the same time.
Yeah, and for the sort of like the casual political watchers, just like being able to chat with a deputy minister is an interesting opportunity. Ministers obviously do a lot, but deputy ministers are really the ones that are in there with their sleeves rolled up. They're not elected officials. Some of them former elected officials, but they're not elected officials, and so they approach the jobs differently. And like if you really want to talk to people on the inside that are participating in the day-to-day decision making and actually following through on the policy and turning the policy into action, I mean, this is who you want to talk to.
Absolutely. I mean, they're the ones that get the marching orders from the minister,
Exactly.
and then they're the ones that then delegate the resources that are going to fulfill that vision of what the minister is trying to do. And so they are the people to talk to, especially if you within each ministry, if you have issues or challenges, or if you have great ideas about how they could do something differently. These guys are really open to feedback, or at least that's been our experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for hanging out with us. It's always nice to have you in studio.
Yeah.
Thanks for making the trip in. Again, people can check out abchamber.ca, find out where members matter and benefits count. It's the Alberta Chambers of Commerce. And if you're not a member, you can find out more about how to get involved, their priorities, their programs, and a whole bunch of other options and resources, including that business resiliency point that we talked about earlier.